Welcome to the 16th lesson in our Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council CCAC 1.0 training series. This is CCAC Lesson 1.16 in our series. We have summarized the first 2 points in our list of reasons for which the Declaration of Independence tells us why we are able to form caucuses at this time through our current political circumstances. First, we know our rights are not given to us by our government. And second, these rights are given to us by a source that is independent of even ourselves, let alone the governments that we create as popular sovereigns to provide us with protection and security as we swear our allegiance to that popular sovereignty. As Blackstone reminded us, these rights also cannot be taken from us except by our own choice to do something to forfeit our rights by our own individual, voluntary self-determination. Continuing now with that summary list, 3, that we are entitled to these inalienable rights by the laws of human nature and nature's God. 4, that we are endowed with certain unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by our Creator, which is the same thing as being entitled to them by the laws of nature and nature's God, just stated in another equal way in the Declaration of Independence as a universal principle. 5, that in fact, government officials have no legitimate powers to take away anyone's rights, except when doing so through just powers by the people's consent or permission. 6, that when a government commits any of the following: tyranny, oppression, abuse, usurpation, illegality, control fraud, that is, color of law, pretense of authority, and illicit financial manipulation, destructive acts, despotism, injuries, neglect, dissolutions, invasions, refusals, obstructions, convulsions, preventions, arbitrary privileges, obstructing justice, harassment, deprivations, impositions, absolute rule, destroying lives, death, desolation, cruelty, perfidy, constraint, and insurrection. You might notice that nearly all of these infractions are specifically listed in and copied from the Declaration of Independence. These are all visible signs of our current government's gross violations, which we may, even shall resist. 7, that it is the right and the duty of the people to resist bad government, restore good government, and renew the country, and we have both a right and a duty to do so when evils are no longer sufferable, after much patience, and we can take proper measures with careful prudence to mitigate such evils through appropriate pre-ordered steps. 8, the principles of vested authority, subsidiarity, popular sovereignty, popular self-government, popular resistance are key components that will be expanded upon as we learn more about caucus and provide the tools to our United States citizenry that we will all use to practice and apply what we learn in the very near future. 9, caucus is a reasonable and legitimate private and public attempt to organize, educate, and discipline ourselves in such a way that we can perform such mitigation before we no longer have the means to do so because things have gone too far to preserve our liberty and justice. Therefore, 10, caucus is clearly a new guard for our future security. And we may also revitalize an old guard as well as is a constitutional and lawful step. As historical philosopher George Santa Anna reminded us in 1905, those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Although there is no record of Santa Anna saying the following, a corollary would be that those who remember the past shall benefit from those good things that could be repeated. All that we are doing by reading and analyzing the Declaration of Independence is pointing out that the founding generation gives us actions of historical precedent and even a legal construct to do a similar act today that they did back in the 1770s to preserve their liberty and restore political justice through the actions of the good people of the United States. We can certainly go back and look at what they did, and some of the things that they did shall clearly give us precedent, form, legal justification, and other supports that we might want to utilize. And if nothing else, we can give people encouragement that we can create new forms because that is what they did. Here's an example of the sort of spirit that we have learned about through the Continental Association and the colonial associations that formed it in the infancy of our federal government's formation. As you learn these things, understand that those individuals framing these organizations were just like us. They were trying to figure things out so very similarly to what we are. They reached out from their powers as Americans and used their wherewithal to do things that they knew they were capable of doing within the political powers they knew they possessed. We shall do likewise. Here's what they encouraged their fellow citizens to do in Maryland as a part of the Maryland Resolves. As our opposition to the settled plan of the administration, Congress, and the Supreme Court to enslave America will be strengthened by a union of all ranks of Americans in this country, we do most earnestly recommend that all former differences about religion or politics and all private animosities and quarrels of every kind from henceforth cease and be forever buried in oblivion, and we conjure every American by their duty to God, their country, and their posterity cordially to unite in defense of our common rights and liberties. You might notice that though this was taken verbatim, there was some exceptions for suggested word changes to modernize the context, and this is taken from the Maryland Resolves on December 12, 1774, and made applicable to 2016. Here's another admonition from the people of Virginia, reminding our elected officials of their duty to work with the people and heed their instruction as they create laws. That the most important and valuable part of the Constitution, upon which its very essence depends, is the fundamental principle of the people's being governed by no laws to which they have not given their consent by representatives freely chosen by themselves, who are affected by the laws they enact equally with their constituents, to whom they are accountable and whose burdens they share, in which consists the safety and happiness of the community. For if this part of the Constitution was taken away or materially altered, the government must degenerate either into an absolute and despotic oligarchy or a tyrannical police state, and the freedom of the people be annihilated. Again, taken verbatim except for a few suggested word changes to modernize the context from the Fairfax Resolves, paragraph 2, July 18, 1774. The question for us then becomes, for what do we need new guards for our future security? We don't need to ask if we have the authority to create such new guards. It appears from what the people did in 1774 and 1775 through their resolves in the association that we are well justified to do likewise, as long as we do what we do in the same way eminently as it was done before. But what we need to focus upon as first principles is the advice from the Declaration of Independence that whenever it is right of the people to alter or abolish any form of government, we need to lay its foundation on such principles first before organizing its powers in such form as to us shall seem most likely to affect our safety and happiness. So let us begin by doing that and using the Declaration of Independence again as our instructor of these foundational principles for this process. This completes the 16th lesson entitled CCAC 1.16. Thank you for listening to the 16th segment as part of our CCAC 1.0 series in our national orientation. Please join us for the next lesson in this series as we continue to unfold the Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council story. This is the extraordinary process in which CCAC will successfully provide continuity of government of, by, and for the people. In our next lesson, CCAC 1.17, we will go on to explain further details of how we implement our Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council. If you realize the necessity of revitalizing constitutional polity at the state and local level, please join this cause by going to www.ccac-us.com and registering on our official website. Take Pre-Quiz 1.0. We then urge you to work through the entire CCAC 1.0 series to understand the continuity of essential information we provide to help us all be on the same page. Then, upon passing the post-quiz with a perfect score, you will be directed to how you take the next step in the process of becoming a member of this vital organization. Please don't shortchange this process. Listen to and study the CCAC 1.0 material carefully. If you have questions or concern about what you are learning so far, or issues affecting your community, please refer to the links connected to this lesson or contact the person who gave you this information. We extend our best wishes from the Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council.